Welcome to the Omni Talk Ask an Expert series with Chris Walton, the series where I go deep on a regular basis with a panel of experts to understand what is on their minds most about how the future of retail is changing. Today, my Omni Talk partner in crime, Ann Mezzenga, joins me for this one because we have a really special set of guests today. Two people near and dear to our hearts who happen to also be the sponsors of our weekly Omni Talk Fast Five podcast. And that is David Ritter and Kristin Kohler Burrows of the A&M Consumer and Retail Group. David and Kristin, welcome to the show.
Great here.
Yeah, I mean, for those that are listening, I mean, and this is crazy. It's crazy that we're doing this. I'm so excited about this. So, like, for those that listen to our regular Omni Talk Fast Five every week,
yes,
David and Kristin are actually the ones that put us on the spot each and every week with some usually really tough question. And for example, last week's question was really intense, and I was really glad Emma, the intern, got to talk about it first and foremost. But we are actually going to interview them and turn the tables a little bit here and put them on the spot with some of our own spotlight type questions. So we're going to ask them everything they know in and about retail because they are retail consultants by practice. And some of them have actually been in the retail business as well as operators. So we're excited to talk about that. And we're going to try to see where they think all this stuff is going. What lies ahead in the future from the chairs atop which they sit. What are the things that we should be thinking about, and try to even maybe close with some predictions from them in terms of how we all should think about things.
I love this. Well, Kristin and Dave, I think you need to give our audience, for those who may not know you, a little bit of background on each of you and about A&M. Kristin, maybe let's start with you.
So, I think Dave's going to talk about the chapters of his career. I like to think I really have books, and probably the first book that of my career, which was made up of a lot of chapters, is I was actually an operator for about 20 plus years. I spent the majority of that in the athletic footwear and apparel industry. So my parents and friends used to call me a shoe dog. And that was largely because I spent a lot of time in athletic footwear companies. So I spent the first 5+ years of my career at Adidas. I ran their second largest category globally called cross training. I did get to spend a lot of time with professional athletes, which my kids today wish that I was doing that now versus then. And then after business school, I ran the Chuck Taylor business for Converse. I was president of Keds, president of GH Bass, and then recently, before joining A&M, I was the CEO of a small consignment retailer. So really, in addition to just loving shoes and sneakers, what attracted me to all of those opportunities was the ability to sort of figure out strategically where to drive growth, either for the category I was managing, or the business or the brand, and how to marshal kind of the resources and initiatives to deliver against that. So I love just to solve that quote unquote engineering problem. And then after my last stint as a CEO, and I was looking around for my next opportunity, I serendipitously was introduced to A&M and just loved the fact that A&M brought to the table kind of a secret sauce of operator meet consultant. And given that I love to solve problems and just get excited about solving a diverse group of problems, thought that it would be really a great career opportunity to help companies from the outside versus the inside.
Kristin, how unique is that? Like that element? Because I can remember, and by the way, for everyone listening, both Kristin and David, Harvard Business School graduates too. So go HBS. But like I can remember back in school, like everyone's flooding into consulting. Here you are, other side of the career, and you're going into it. Is that operator piece of it very different in terms of how a consulting group operates? No pun intended, but.
I mean, I think Dave will go into that a little bit as well. But yeah, I think it gives us a different perspective, in that what we come to our clients with is things that really can get done and can be operationalized.
Okay.
And if you have certain expertise from a certain space, optimally you're getting to the core root of the problem that you're trying to solve, and a solution that much more quickly.
And why you so perfectly fit with Omni Talk, I have to say. I mean,
good.
we're about being real retailers, talking about real retail news. So I think having an operator background and being a consultant is a perfect match up there. Dave, I want to hear a little bit about your background. Tell us about you and what you do at A&M.
Absolutely. So frankly, you probably have two of the most unique backgrounds from a consulting perspective. We are kind of oddballs a little bit, but
yeah.
My background, as Kristin was mentioning, I kind of have 3 chapters in my background. So I went to West Point and was an Army officer for the first 6 years of my career. I was in the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment as a field artillery officer. I was stationed in Colorado Springs. It was an awesome leadership experience, and I learned a lot, but frankly, it's a young man's game, so it's not what I wanted to do longer term. So I went back to HBS, as Chris mentioned. Coming out of HBS, my second chapter was, I spent 15 years as a partner at McKinsey in a retail practice out of the Chicago office. While I was at McKinsey, I led the store operations practice, and then I led the grocery practice for 3 or 4 years at the end of my tenure. Most of my client work kind of sits at the intersection of retail, technology, and operations. So during my time at McKinsey, I had a great opportunity to serve some of the biggest names in grocery, drug, food service on many of their biggest strategic challenges. It was a great run, but frankly, after 15 years, I was ready for a change. So that kind of brings me to my 3rd chapter. About 18 months ago, I got an entrepreneurial itch to try to build something myself. So I joined Alvarez and Marsal, the bigger A&M is what we call it, to help build out the consumer and retail practice, which we think is something new, exciting, and differentiated, frankly.
How new is it, David? How long have you guys been doing it?
So I think theoretically we've been up and running 18 months, but over the last year is where we've kind of scaled. And we're now entering a phase where I think, we are, I guess, probably 15 partners and almost 100 consultants deep. So we are, we believe that now we are kind of a formidable presence in the market, and we are going to market. I can tell you a little bit more about what we're trying to do at CRG, if that's helpful. I think it's probably
absolutely
good segue.
Yeah, for sure.
So at our core, we are trying to help clients serve many of the most complex challenges they're facing. And we phrase it as help them achieve their maximum potential. We think by helping our clients achieve their maximum potential, we can also, from a values perspective, really help grow our people and our communities to their maximum potential as well. One of the things that I think has brought many of the partners and our team together is a shared set of values. So we really believe in being client first. As Kristin mentioned, we have an operator-like pragmatism. So we want to we don't want to do projects that sit in a binder on a desk. Like, we want our programs to be implemented and to drive client impact. And that brings us to the third thing, is just we are all about impact that our clients achieve.
What kinds of things are you guys seeing right now? I really want to dig into the last year has been insane, but as people are coming to you, whether they're in a good spot or, they're trying to figure out what to do next, what are you seeing that are really standout moments for you and for your clients?
So what we're seeing really is those companies that are a little stuck and either have to, as Dave mentioned, sort of that second bucket, have to figure out how to drive some more efficiencies, improve processes, take out costs, or they're thinking of, look, we have an opportunity to reassort our assortment given the shifting customer trends. We have an opportunity, we need to be more effective on the marketing side. So what can we do to improve our marketing effectiveness during these times, given we don't have a lot of new customers coming in? What can we do to maximize our current customers? So I think in terms of, to answer your question, and really, the types of problems we're seeing is also a subset of the type of industry or space they're in. Sure. Dave can talk to a little, you have the opposite problem in grocery, right? Where it's like, how do we actually build our infrastructure fast enough, given the accelerant and the growth that we're seeing on the grocery side?
Oh yeah, Dave, that was gonna be my question actually. Like, I'm curious, as Kristin, as you talked about, are you seeing a general proportion of, say, how do we just do things a little bit better against, say, overall transformation? And then as you bring like you just mentioned, a category like grocery into it, is it a little bit of everything all at once? Like, how do you lay that landscape for us right now?
Yeah, no. So I spent a bunch of time in grocery and CPG, food CPG specifically. And as you can imagine, some of the trends associated with eating at home and customer stockpiling have caused their business to be absolutely on fire. So many of the topics that we're discussing with them are around inventory management. So how do you get enough product onto the shelves? As Kristin mentioned, assortment. So a lot of the newness and kind of one-facing SKUs in grocery are becoming less important. They're actually thinking about giving that space back to the kind of big, fast-moving SKUs so that they can stay in stock in a world where customers are stockpiling. And then the last thing is, or one of the last things is in terms of digital, partnerships with Instacart, DoorDash are becoming kind of bigger and bigger elements of their value proposition. And then how do you, in models where you partner with those folks, how do you actually go to market in a way that doesn't impact the in-store experience? You're seeing a lot of Instacart shoppers cramming aisles in stores and making the customer experience for grocery, even worse, frankly. So they're looking at network design things like micro fulfillment centers, dark stores, ghost kitchens, those type of network design decisions.
What shifts are you seeing on the back of house?
I think we're going to see an explosion in micro fulfillment centers in the back of overspaced stores, frankly, just because it's so much less efficient to stock while there's people in the stores as opposed to handle the digital commerce via automation.
You mentioned Instacart too, in terms of like people being in the aisles and still grappling that question. I know, again, CPG and retail as the focus. Like, what do you think's happening there? Like, how does that landscape continue to play out across? Like, how are retailers, but also how are CPGs thinking about that?
First, I would say, Albertsons' recent move to shift, more velocity to Instacart says a lot. I mean, I do think that the economics of doing delivery yourself are just frankly difficult in the current models for grocers. So I do think in the near term we'll see Instacart, and DoorDash is aggressively moving into the space. So I think those will be the two names that you see kind of win in the grocery delivery space in the near term. I do think longer term it's a fair question to ask. You hear speculation that Instacart could go direct, and obviously that's an interesting question. It would put their core business at risk, so I don't know that they would take that risk, but it's certainly a potential option. In terms of CPG companies, though, we are seeing our CPG clients increasingly investigating a DTC model. The economics there get a little tough just because they tend to be in many cases kind of bulky and expensive to ship. But there are. I think they will continue to pursue that, and that DTC and the CPG space will continue to grow.
I want to click in on that. When you say it gets what makes going DTC so difficult for some of the CPG brands?
Well, I think there's two or three things. So the first thing is just that they are built to sell to business. They're a B2B business, right? So having that digital front end expertise is not in their core wheelhouse, or hasn't been to date.
Sure.
I think that's why you're seeing some digital upstarts or more digital native brands have a little bit more success DTC initially, just because it's not in the older school CPG companies' DNA. But the second thing is just the logistics of the DTC model. When it's a bulky package and freight, it is tough, right? Like you could be shipping 3 zones away via UPS, and that starts getting, depending on how expensive the thing that you're shipping is, the math becomes difficult to make the economics work.
It is interesting though, because you think of what the footwear and apparel industry was like 20 years ago, right? I mean, it was a wholesale based business. I mean, the Nikes, the Adidas of the world, right? So similar, right? Their primary customer was B2B. And clearly the growth there has been driven by a significant shift to direct to consumer, actually firing, quote unquote, some of their wholesale partners, right? And really limiting the number of partners that they sell to. So the CPG could potentially look to those models to figure out how they got it done.
Well, I got to ask you then, because you brought that up, like big announcement from Adidas with your background, like saying that 50% of their business is going to be online, direct to consumer. Like, how do you think about that in context of everything you just said?
Well, I mean, Nike made a similar announcement a couple of years ago and has successfully started to build to that. I think at the end of the day, and actually one of the reasons why I made a conscious decision to sort of shift when I was an operator, to shift to a retail model that was more brick and mortar and e-com, was because of the control of the customer touch point. You know, so figuring how you can keep that customer in the ecosystem and really, you know, from new customer acquisition to retention through loyalty programs, apps, et cetera. And I think what you're seeing is the Nikes of the world really explore how they interact with the customer in different formats. Well, I like to say that really the point of sale is the customer, right? So, so they are going to decide when and where and how they purchase you, and you need to be there in every single case. And wholesale is becoming a smaller and smaller part of that. I think the challenge is, how do you set it up so that you can effectively drive profitable sales? So that gets to some of the things that Dave was saying in terms of shifting your operating model and infrastructure against that.
So there's a major rebalancing there then, if I take it from what you said, Kristin. I think that's important to think about, is like, so like, again, your hypothesis is, or your I shouldn't say hypothesis, your thesis from your on the job is that there is some physical touch point that matters for a lot of brands. Like, it's a pretty hard route to just go DTC. And so companies are going to be needing to rebalance exactly what that means in the physical world, probably, you know, in relation to where they've been historically. Is that the type of thing you guys are working on with people as well, to try to figure out what is that right appropriate density, amount of stores, physical retailing, given, you know, who the brand is and what they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's looking at, to your point, what is that optimal channel mix? And then what does that mean for how you structure to deliver against that?
One area that we're seeing a lot of chatter around these days that we've been talking about quite a bit on the podcast the last couple of weeks is this idea of revenge spending, and, you know, what's going to happen now that we have another round of stimulus checks out. Obviously footwear has seen pretty marked improvements in every time one of these stimulus checks have come out. With your background in that category, and as you guys think about how you're going to help retailers approach the best way to, you know, take advantage of this extra money being in the economy, if that is what actually happens, how do you approach that that plan or that strategy with them? What are your thoughts on that?
The focus for the high income segment of our population will be around those more experiences. And then again, the industries that kind of rise along with that. I think the stimulus checks will result in, you know, in sort of your core essentials for that segment of the market. So I do think there should be some benefit there, whether it could be a replacement pair of shoes, you know, some, you know, replacement jeans, sweater, whatever, that you just they haven't been able to purchase until the stimulus checks came in.
And how are you guys helping retailers make the decision on like how hard to go toward that? Because I feel like there's still got to be a lot of residual, you know, last season we were trying to make, you know, t-shirts out of long sleeve shirts and things, like trying to figure out ways, or storing tons of apparel to see if they could sell it this season, hoping that the pandemic would be further along and we'd have vaccines in place. What advice are you giving them? Dave, do you have anything that you can think of that, you know, comes to mind immediately? I think there's a lot of people
so I think there's a couple of things that we're actively doing, and you know, you guys were talking about apparel, so that's a nice place to start. So I mean, I do think that we collectively believe that we'll see increases in store traffic, you know, in the next quarter or two in a fairly significant way. I'm not sure if it'll be Roaring 20s-esque, but it will certainly be an uptick, and I think that we'll see that across most formats. That said, I think we have the strong leading indicators that suggest it will probably be a value component to that, and then a higher end branded component to that. And that in the middle, I think there are some real questions, the middle or whatever you want to call it. But what are we doing specifically? A couple of things. So I mean, we are looking at inventory positions, and in some cases, we're encouraging our clients to liquidate and whether that be using marketplaces like eBay, but the notion of introducing last fall's product this summer doesn't really work, right? So I think there is just this pragmatic lens you have to have, where you do have to clean out the pipes a little bit. The second thing we're doing is we are encouraging them with supply chains being so challenged, we are encouraging them to make a bit of a bet in the summer and fall categories. We think there's likely to be a reasonable uptick. We're even seeing it already relative to last year. So I think our advice to our clients now is, if you were going to make a bet, now is the time to make sure that you have product allocated. There's nothing worse than a bounce back here that you can't actually take advantage of. So we are doing that. And then the last thing I'll say is we are still encouraging them to challenge the role of the store. So e-commerce we may see some reversion to the mean, but we still anticipate it being a huge part of retail going forward. So many of the things that we were forced to try that weren't the most commonplace, like ship from store, BOPUS, we think a lot of those operating models are here to stay. So really getting your store set up where you can operate those models in a world where there's additional foot traffic will be important, so that your operations don't fall apart as people return to the stores.
I would say, I think too, it's important. It's important for each retailer to kind of reset and say, look, this customer has changed. Given that, and given what we think are his or her buying patterns, is my value proposition as a brand, as a retailer, where it needs to be? If not, where do I need to shift it to? What does that mean for my assortment mix? What does that mean for my marketing spend? What does that mean for my digital platform? So I do think there needs to be kind of almost a clean sheet, sort of outside in approach, where people are really looking hard at themselves and how and where they deliver value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all good points. The point about that, especially when you start talking about curbside, I mean, I just saw a statistic yesterday. I think it was from Signified, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they said that of the top 500 retailers in the digital commerce 360 cohort, whatever that is 43% of them now are offering curbside pickup as a result of the pandemic, where that number was 7% before. So I think that speaks to your point, Kristin. The big question here, though, you take what Kristin said, you've got to meet the consumer where they want you to meet them. The profitability question in grocery, though. So as you guys are advising grocers and you're saying, okay, like here are the 3 or 4 things you need to do right now to try to get a handle of the profitability question, which is looming. And I don't think enough people are still talking about that if these new norms do reestablish, or do stay established, I should say. What are those things they should be looking at? What's the guideposts that they should be following?
Yeah, for sure. And then you layer on, upward pressure on minimum wage on top of all of that. So I do think the grocery environment has benefited from tailwinds, but needs to get ahead of the profitability question. So I think the first thing is just network design. There needs to be a model of, whether it's an Ocado, like ship from macro DC, ship from micro fulfillment center, pick from store, like getting that network design in a new world with, 20% e-commerce is imperative. The second thing is, I think, embrace computer vision. It's early, but I think we will see this coming.
Really?
And I think in 2 forms, especially with the minimum wage concerns. I think cashierless checkout, you're going to see tried a lot more, and especially as the technology gets better in the bigger box. And the second thing is just literally drones, phones, and robots for inventory management. I think you'll see a lot of that. Time intense processes that are manual, like counting inventory. We will see automation using computer vision in a major way. And then the last thing I think is I do think there will be this better vendor collaboration with Instacart and DoorDash to fix the substitution problem. So one of the biggest things that grocers are facing is, you could order Diet Coke on Instacart, and if they're stocked out, you might get caffeine-free Diet Coke, which is an awful substitution. So some kind of API or linkage that helps connect what the grocery store actually has in stock relative to what Instacart and DoorDash are selling from that store.
Got it. Okay. That a lot there. I want to click. Oh my God. We're gonna have to put in. I think we should put them on the spot because there are some things that were thrown out there that we gotta go. I want to hear their side of this now.
So we are putting you both on the spot. We're turning the tables. We have one final question for you both. What is something that no one is paying attention to or seeing right now that they should be paying attention to? Kristin, I'm going to start with you. What do you say?
All right. So I actually think there's a couple things. Sustainability is out there, right? And you're hearing about it, but I do not think it is loud enough from the partners that we're working with in terms of solving the problem around consumers are starting to care more and more, especially the Gen Z customer, right? We're so focused on the millennial. And we need to start picking up to talk about the Gen Z customer. And then B, how do you deliver sustainability in a way that's less expensive? So I think that's key, especially as, again, back to the Gen Z customer, I think the value piece for them is so critical. And they're not currently, right, they're sort of not living sort of the quote unquote best life that their millennial older brother is in terms of what their annual spend is. So I think what retailers really need to start focusing on is how to be more sustainable and deliver it around a more value-based price.
It feels like that's hitting a different level for us than it ever has. Like, and if you've been in retail long enough, you kind of get a sense of when that's starting to happen. Whereas you were hearing people talk about sustainability even 10, 15 years ago, but now it feels like it's at a different level. Yeah. What's the low hanging fruit there though? So like you just said what you said about resale, like where should people be focusing to bring that effort more to the fore in a way that works for them business model wise, in a way that works for the consumers in terms of what they're looking for?
I mean, I think there's some simple things retailers and brands can do tomorrow. I mean, hang tags. Who actually reads a hang tag these days?
Great point.
Right. So yeah. Look, hang tags, huge area. Second area, look at air freight. I mean, we've worked with so many retailers and brands where last minute design changes, last minute product changes, you're air freighting this and that in, and air freight costs. I mean, I think it's something like the emissions of an air versus ship is something like 50 times that of a boat. Mm. So make some simple, quick changes. You crawl before you walk, run. What we say is like, take out the trash, right? Like get rid of the easy stuff, clean up your garments, clean up your product process. And that's to us a great first start.
David, what about you? Give us what should we be paying attention to?
All right. Well, it's much easier being on the asking side of this equation. So listen, I think the pandemic has forced a lot of retailers to have a very inward focus, and rightfully so. Safety, difficulty in the new operating model, but it has caused us to look more inward and domestic. And I think very few people are thinking about the opportunity, potential associated with international growth. So since early 2020, we haven't talked much at all about international growth. But one thing that gets missed is the back half of 2019, Alibaba opened its ecosystem to US-based commerce. And I think if you just look at Singles Day alone, the potential for US-based retailers to actually leverage the Alibaba ecosystem and go after the Chinese consumer is an insane opportunity that no one's talking about, but is off the charts in its potential.
David, why are people not, we've talked about that on our show. I've written about it in Forbes. Why aren't people doing that? I mean, I even know of companies that have done significant volume with like one head count and they shut the thing down because they just don't want to manage it. Like you said, they don't want the distraction. Like, what is it that's preventing them from going after that more full bore?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is just management headspace. The pandemic hit exactly the wrong time, but I do think there's a deeper reason, and I don't think that U.S.-based companies have a very good understanding of the Chinese demographic and the Chinese shopper. So they're frankly, they're a little nervous that how to position their products in the Chinese market more broadly.
Is it because of a lack of digital understanding?
I think it's a lack of understanding of the market more broadly, the consumer. But I think there's also a lack of understanding of the support that Alibaba has started to provide in that ecosystem for retailers from other countries. There's a really interesting play kind of coming together there where they'll help you, find the right person to live stream in that market with your goods. Like there's an emerging, I think a real emerging opportunity there for some brands that have been favorite brands in the US to open the aperture and expand themselves to billions of additional consumers, which is pretty untapped at this point.
Dude, that's a great point. That's amazing. Those were both great, like sustainability and the opportunity overseas. Like, God, I did not think you guys were going to be giving us that today. That was fantastic. Woo! All right, that was good. I like that. All right.
I think you guys did a great job, but the real question for you is how millennial are you?
Yeah, you're not done yet.
Are you both ready to play how millennial are you on top of that last question?
Ooh.
I am ready, but I have to admit, I think I'm going to be ashamed at where this lands.
That's
probably true.
You know what? Those last comments will save you, I'm sure, from any embarrassment that might we might be looking at after this one.
Score us. Will you actually score us on will you give us our millennial age?
Chris and I are very judgy, so we'll figure out our own way.
We could try that. We could try that. How old are millennials at this point? Like what is their actual cohort? I'll look that up as you're asking this first question. Go ahead, Ann.
Sounds good. All right, first question. When you're paying for groceries, are you pulling out a credit card or are you using mobile payment? Kristin.
I get a big fail on this. Well, does a debit card, can be like a tweener answer?
Oh, I don't even think that tweens are using debit cards anymore. Just Venmo and PayPal.
I use a debit card, but I do online grocery as well. So maybe that can give me a little bit of a better.
We'll see.
Yeah,
Chris is taking notes.
This is a good try.
Chris is taking notes. Dave.
Yeah, no, that's not equally as bad. We do lead with online grocery, but I'm a credit card guy, which is ironic because I'm in the middle of building an engagement where I'm helping a corporate client build Apple Pay into their digital offer, but credit card, unfortunately.
They'll get
your
lots
credit
of
card too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they'll get lots of insight from you as the consumer they're trying to convert. Dave. I think this is great.
Exactly.
You're living it. You're the mindset.
Yeah, right.
The converting mindset. I love it. I'm still doing math on the age demographics of Gen Z and millennials right now. So, Ed, keep it rolling.
Okay, sounds good. In the last week, we will include groceries since you both mentioned that. How many times have you ordered food, groceries, or drinks from an app? Kristin.
Oh, geez. We're at 4 or 5 times a week. We have Carvel Fridays, which is, we're ordering through DoorDash. Mm-hmm. We do order night on Thursdays. And then I do lunches. I order lunches a couple times a week. So maybe I'm regaining some millennial ground.
This is better. We are picking up some.
Except Carvel Fridays. Carvel is like a brand from the 80s. Like, what are we ordering on Carvel Fridays?
Those are the kids. They love it. They each get their own little.
Really? I haven't had Carvel since like 1984.
Yeah. What's the Carvel
next
equivalent?
To Smitty's grocery store.
Yeah, right. There's like a mixed thing. What is it? It's like not a Blizzard.
That's Dairy Queen, right? The DQ.
Yeah. There's one at Carvel. It's amazing. I remember in New York. We used to do it on Sundays, but Fridays. I get it. You got to have at least one day in the weekend with your Carvel hit. Yeah. Okay, Dave. What about you? How many times this week?
I'm 3. 1 grocery, 2 food. I have to admit, though, we've recently moved to Texas and we live in the suburbs. So when I lived in downtown Chicago, it was much higher. But we're actually, Texas is opening up. So we're going to sit on patios and eat outside more than we're ordering.
That's right. And I always love these questions when people qualify the answers, like with, I used to do this, but now, no, but I used to do this. It's always good. It's my favorite. This next question's the best, though.
All right, you guys, last question. If you could only use one social app, which one would you choose and why? We'll keep it going in order. Kristin, start with you.
Yeah, I think, I did sort of grapple between Twitter and Instagram, but it's Instagram. why. I do love seeing all the stuff that my friends post, but I also have to say I'm like introduced to new brands that way, and I really kind of like it. And I feel kind of cool because I'm like, this brand must be so niche, and they must be targeting me because I am like so millennial.
Why Twitter? Why was it a close call with Twitter?
Well, Twitter, I do like some of the stuff, from a business politics kind of cultural perspective. I do like reading kind of the Twitter headlines.
Okay. Yeah. So for more for like news?
Yeah.
Like seeing what's happening?
Yeah.
Dave, what's your answer?
My answer is Instagram. My mom has become incredibly active on Facebook, which, as much as I love her, has taken quite a bit of fun out of the Facebook experience. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not a heavy user. I find Instagram and the video portion of that to be a more engaging source of content. And then on the TikToks and Snapchats of the world, I'm not even on them, so they're not in my choice set.
Chris, what does the survey say? Where are we at here?
Before we go there, I want to ask if Dave has any guilty follows on on Instagram, some lumberjack sites, or like what kind of guilty follows that we got going on Instagram, Dave? And then I'll do the math kind of thing here. I know for those listening, Dave is actually lumberjack Dave. So he's the one, if you follow our show,
that was supposed to be a secret. Plaid. You just revealed his secret identity.
I had to let it go. But.
So Chris is officially a snitch. But the way this really manifests itself is we were having a debate on whether or not Eddie Bauer was a brand that was still relevant, and I responded that I actually wear flannels quite a bit and have since been branded Lumberjack Dave.
That was well worth bringing the secret out of the open on that one. Great explanation, Dave. All right, so I did the math. So math was never my strong suit, but according to Google, I think millennials are generally between the ages of 24 and 40 right now. So I don't know, Ann, what do you think? I'm thinking this one's tough. I'm going to get a solid like 35 for the two of them.
Oh, I was going to say 33. You always 33? Go down a couple lower than you think, Chris.
We're pretty close. The credit card thing was a little bit detrimental though.
Yeah.
Right? And then Dave's thing at the end where he like couldn't use Snapchat and TikTok without his brain just exploding, which is, he didn't say that, but that's how I interpreted it. So I don't know. I kind of hedged towards more 35, but anyway. All right. That was a blast, you guys. Always a lot of fun. That last segment's always a ton of fun. What, if people, were listening to this podcast and they say, hey, there were some really interesting points, especially like some of those things we brought up on the end around sustainability, over getting, business going in China, grocery profitability. How should they get in touch with you guys?
Hey, I think the easiest way is to reach out directly to one of the two of us. I'm D Ritter, DRITTER at alvarezandmarsal with no spaces.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find. Just feel free to reach out directly.
I can be reached at kburrows at alvarezandmarsal.com or through LinkedIn, my LinkedIn page.
Yeah, and we'll put their name, the names will be in the body of the description too of the podcast and the videos too. So if you guys want to reach out, just hit them up on LinkedIn. These guys are super cool and they're super fun to talk to and very responsive. But hey guys, Kristin, Dave, thanks for doing that with us today. This is fun. We're gonna actually have you on our Fast Five too. We're gonna put you on the spot in that podcast here up and coming. So loyal fans, wait for that. That's gonna be a hoot. It'll be a lot like I imagine we talked about here, and we won't, or like it felt like here, and we won't even know what direction those questions are coming. But again, thanks to them. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Again, David Ritter and Kristin Kohler Burrows of the A&M Consumer and Retail Group. We say it every week. It's still more important than ever. Hopefully we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel here. Be careful out there.